I am going through a major transition and it is not easy. It is like, even though like I'm smiling and everything still looks the same, like everything is not the same. There is so much that is happening and has been happening in my life. And I am just like sometimes going 1 hour to 1 hour. And so today, I want to talk to you all about transitioning. So, welcome back to another episode of the You, Me, and Jesus podcast, where we talk about all things you, me, and Jesus. And so, I am so glad that you are here. I'm glad that I have a space to be able to talk about all the different things that have been are going on with me and my life and my relationship with God. So thank you so much for being here and allowing me to just kind of share, and hopefully anything that I say will be a blessing to you. So, we're talking about transitioning and the major transition season that I am in. So I've been talking about this for a little while now, but I am getting ready to move from San Diego, California, back to Houston, Texas. Now, if you are new to the show, then it's important to note this. My history is I moved when God asked me to move. Okay. The first time I didn't even know it, but I was born in Chicago, raised in Kentucky. And when I turned like 23, 24, I felt like this big fish in a small pond. I didn't really understand it, what was going on, but I just felt, restless. And I ended up moving to Richmond, Virginia, and I was there for 8 years. I learned throughout time that, these restless feelings that I have are actually God telling me to move. And when I went through divorce, like I think it was maybe 6 or so months after the process or whatever, I just kept feeling this like knowing that I was going to move. And I was on the phone with a friend and he says to me, my next move was going to be to Houston, Texas. And I was like, what? Houston, Texas, but he said it a couple times and then God just kept confirming it to me in so many different ways. The biggest way is always with the number 11. Like that first time I just kept seeing 11. It was just how many times I saw it was wild. And when I finally agreed to move and I was choosing an apartment, the apartment complex called me a couple weeks after I chose, I signed the lease and said, hey, we have a different apartment for you. The apartment number is 1111. And so that was kind of like the confirmation, the biggest confirmation of moving to Houston, Texas. And so I was in Houston, Texas for, was it 4 years I was in Houston? 4 years. And at the end of the third year, I started having this dreams and this knowing that it was time to move. And I started seeing the 11s again, but he told me that I was going to Redding, California, which is where Bethel Church is. Many people go to Bethel Church to go to BSSM. I wasn't going to BSSM because I had just done BSSM remotely, but that's where he wanted me to go. And it was a beautiful season. It was a lot that I learned about myself, him. It was beautifully challenging in so many different ways. At the end of the second year, I felt that restlessness again, and he was telling me that he wanted me to move to San Diego, California, which of course I was very excited about because San Diego is gorgeous, and I have been here now for 3 years. And last year I started feeling this restlessness again. And I was like, maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm just trying to make myself move because I've been doing all this therapy. And in all this therapy and EMDR and trauma therapy and all that, you start to know yourself. You start to just be aware of you and just the healing, And so I was just like, maybe this is me. And when I get bored or when I get whatever, I move. Maybe that was that. And then I started having dreams and I'm like, oh, and he starts confirming to me that I am moving back to Houston. Now I have moved. I've lived in Chicago, Kentucky, Virginia, Texas, Redding, here. I've never gone back to a place. And I thought it was really odd for him to ask me to move back, but I was also very excited about it because the only reason why I left Houston was because he asked me to, not because I wanted to, but because he asked me to. And I was so glad to go back to Houston because I love Houston. Now it is hot. It's really hot there, but outside of it being hot, I just really loved living in Houston, Texas. Not to mention there's no state tax. Cost of living is lower than San Diego. It's culturally diverse. I still know people there and all the things, But I was very excited about, okay, going back to Houston. So then, there was all these other things that started to happen in my mind. And usually when he tells me to move, I sell everything and I move. And I only leave with like my car, my cats, and whatever. But this time I was like, I got a whole house of furniture. Like I am like grown in this space. And so I started going around like trying to itemize, all the things in my house. And I was just like, it's going to cost me way too much money to replace all this stuff versus moving it. I ended up settling on getting a pod, and a pod cost about $2,600 for a pod, and I just have to have some people load it and then unload it. And I'm like, versus, you know what I'm saying? And so I started this whole process of like preparing to move. Now, in the midst of it all, like my business has been growing and my influence has been growing, and me speaking and teaching in places has just been astronomical. It's been a very, very busy time. So you're talking about, I went through that big surgery in November, December of last year, and all of that transitioning, all of that learning and all that, plus knowing that I'm getting ready to move. So like preparing myself mentally, emotionally, financially, and then the house, stopping everything here, starting everything there, finding out where to live there, and knowing that this is a whole new city. Like some of it's familiar, but a lot of it's not, And then just the emotions of ending a season here, like knowing that my relationships with people here is going to be different. I'm in a group chat here, and I'm knowing that I'll have to leave that group chat because they're going to be talking about things that I can't be a part of. Knowing that I won't be able to just pick up and see certain people, or just all of my current habits in this place is not going to be the same as in Houston. And knowing that I have to figure out what is Houston, like what is that going to look like there and all that. Not to mention my cat, Eddie, we had to put him down about 5 weeks ago. And Eddie's 16. He was 16. And Eddie has been with me all the places. And Eddie was with me in Kentucky, in Virginia, in Texas, in Reading, in San Diego. And now in this transition, he's not going with us. And I'm tearing up now because I'm just like, oh man, just that level. It's a huge transition of 16 years. And that has just been like a lot of different things in so many different ways, also recognizing that my influence is about to explode because what I am currently working on and who I'm working with. And it's just a lot that is happening right now. And they're all good things, like I feel like crying, but like Eddie transitioning was going to happen. He was sick. He had cancer, he just wasn't healthy. And I knew that was going to happen at some point. I just didn't think that it was going to be then, even though God kind of gave me a heads up a year ago. But just knowing that I'm like starting over without him, like just packing things up and knowing that like just like all these things that are happening, you know what I'm saying? And the best thing that I would say that I'm doing for myself is I'm making sure I take time with God. It's not as consistent. It's normally every morning in the mornings, and it's just life has just been going at the speed of light. So it hasn't been as consistent as I want it to be. But in those mornings where I know I have time in the morning, I look forward to them. Like this morning, I was just like, yes, I've got about 30 minutes. And I'm like, oh my God, thank you, God, I've got 30 minutes because I've been traveling. I just haven't had the time. And the best thing that I have going for myself during this transition is my relationship with God. And just knowing that I can just go like, okay, let's just dump out how we feel. Let's just, talk to him and unpack this and unpack that. And ask him for help with this and ask him for help with that, and invite him into your dreams, and just inviting him into all this, you know, this process, and when I think about all the times that I've transitioned, like the best thing that I've had going for me is God. And I've done all these transitions single, so it is hard. Okay. It's hard because I run a business that's already a lot. Then you're talking about shutting things down, figuring out how you're going to pack up and all this stuff and getting things moved, finding a place to live, getting all the things turned on their responsibilities and paying for all the things, all the whatever. Then going like, okay, how we're going to get from me and the cats from here to there. Oh, my car. Let me make sure I take my car in and get all that stuff like taken care of, and just like, oh, here could be this expense, just all this stuff that goes along with it. But like when I sit here and just think about this transition time, I'm like, I literally could cry about it right now, because I just feel like it's a hard time. It's stressful. It's busy. But the one thing I have going for me is God. Like I already had, but I was like, I had to go, okay, what's the expense of all the different things, right? Then I had to go, let me call around and see who's going to do a pod and when to do it, what date. And then go, okay, how am I going to get everything packed? Let me organize with friends to see who can come and help me pack and all that. What's the last date that I can have my office set up? Because I have to work in my office. I have to go to LA for a business trip on the 15th and 16th. And I said, okay, I come back home on the 9th and the 16th. Don't try to leave the next day on the 17th because it's just too much. But then I said, when do I get the pod delivered? And I was like, okay. And I've just been going back and forth for like a couple months. And I finally just sat with God and I was just like, okay, wait. We know that this thing is happening here with the LA. And so if I'm already going to be gone for those 2 days, it's okay if my compartment is completely empty except for the cats. And all I need to have for the cats is their food, blankets, their beds, and then it's okay. And so then I was just like, okay, maybe I should have the pod delivered on this day, have the movers come on this day, and then I sleep on my air mattress that night. I go to LA this night and this night, sleep on my air mattress this night here, have one other full day where the house is empty. I hire a lady to come in and clean the entire house, right? And then I sleep that night, pack up the car that night with just whatever I'm taking with me, and then I leave the next morning. But to even get there I couldn't get there until I did all this other stuff, making sure that everything else was taken care of. And just kind of being with God and just being like, okay, God, you and I are not talking the way we normally talk, but can you just help me? Can you just strategize with me? Can you just help me, And just knowing that somebody is helping me. You know what I mean? Because like if I was married, my husband would be helping me, but I'm not married. And so I'm like, I am depending on somebody to help me. And I'm just like, God, help me make all of these decisions, because I've got to make all these decisions. That's like even putting my cat down. I was like, God, I don't want to have to make this decision, but I know I have to make it. It's my call to make. And I was just like, God, you've got to help me with this decision. Are you sure? Are you sure? Like for a couple of days, I was like, are you sure? And then when we got to the vet, I was just like, God, are you sure? Are you sure? I'm just like doing this. Like, I don't want to have to make this decision. And just knowing that, I did it with him. I talked to him. He was telling me all this stuff. He was just like, he was just reminding me of like, look at him. Look at how sad he is. Look at how tired he is. Like this plus this plus this. He's not going to make it much. He was just talking to me all through this. And he was reminding me of like, King, you've got a lot of travel coming up. And he was like, you don't want him to transition while you are away. You don't want him to transition while you're trying to drive. He's like, he was just telling me all this stuff. And it was really helping me to make the right decision for Eddie, not just for me, but for Eddie, the cat. And so now, as I am choosing a place to live, I was looking at all these different factors and all this stuff. And then I would just have these knowings of like, actually go check reviews here, and actually go check reviews here, go check all these things. And he was just really helping me to go, don't go off of what somebody else is saying. Don't go off of what you are seeing. Go off of what I am revealing to you. Because there was this one apartment I really wanted to move into. It was like 2 months free plus $750. Beautiful, high rise. I mean, big windows. I mean, it was just amazing. And I really wanted to move in there. And I just kept having this like, not sure. And when I looked at the reviews are bad. And I said, okay. But there was this other one that I wasn't sure about. And I was like, I didn't really like my experience when I first walked in with the receptionist. But everything else was amazing. And he just kind of said, go back there, go look at that again. He was like, and look at their reviews. Their reviews were amazing. And I was just like, what are you saying? And he was just like, go with this one. And when I applied for that one, apparently an apartment complex I used to live in here in San Diego owns that apartment complex in Houston. So I got approved so fast that they forgot to tell me that I got approved, and no deposit. I mean, we always pay all this money for deposit, zero. I was just like, what? And all the big windows, I mean, the amenities are just beyond any apartment complex I've ever lived in. Like, so many. I can't even describe how many there are. And it was a reminder of like, you have all these places to work, all these places to shoot content. You have all this stuff for you to take yourself to the next place that you're trying to go in. And he's just being with me, right? Now, I know this is a lot to kind of try to take in with me processing and all that, but I'm just trying to say that I'm in this season of transition. And the number one thing that I am doing to transition well with God is spending time with him, right? It may not be as much, but I am intentionally spending time with him. On those days when I don't have a meeting until 9 or 10 o'clock, I am spending that morning time with him. If I can schedule things for later in the day, I do, and I am just giving myself grace and a day. I am reaching out to people, asking for help, and people are saying, yes, I can come help you with this. I can help you this day with this, and I can help you this day with that. And people are showing up and supporting me and helping me while I invite God to just help me. I mean, everything's expensive. So I run a business, but it's a lot of expenses when you're moving. And I'm like, God, can you just bring in money for this and money for that? All of a sudden, one day somebody called me and said, hey, we want you to speak at an event. We'll pay you $7,000. That was all of it. Like, I was like, it was great, just amazing. But the whole thing that I'm trying to, look, I did this. The whole thing of what I'm trying to say is that if you are in a season of transition, or if you know that you're going to go through a season of transition, the number one thing you can do is walk with God through the entire process. Walk with him through the entire process. Invite him through the entire process, every thought, every decision, everything. And what you're going to find is that he is so smart. He is so wise. He's the best husband. He's the best wife. He's the best strategist. He's the best broker. He's the best everything that you have to navigate in your season of transition if you let him. Okay. If you let him. So I am letting him. I have to do the actual things, but I am letting him lead and guide me, because otherwise I don't know what I'm doing. And it's hard and it's stressful, but I'm like, if I just walk with him, everything's going to be okay. All right. So I'm going to keep you updated. If you want to come and follow me on Instagram stories, that's where I'm going to be doing a lot of my updates and all that as we navigate. I have this thing where I call the Facebook moms. So the morning that I get in the car with my cats, I will say, all right, Facebook moms, we're headed out today. I'll keep you updated in 5 hours, and I'll keep you updated when we're stopping for the night, and I'll tell you what city that we are going to be staying in. Because when I moved to California, the Facebook moms were like, we want to know what's going on, where you are at all times. So I'll update the Facebook moms because it makes me feel good, because my mom isn't like that. My dad isn't like that. They don't really care to, so I let the Facebook moms, be my mom or whatever. So that is it for today. I will keep you updated. And so thank you so much for listening and watching.